Chief, turning the tables on protesters who confronted him over the death of a Milwaukee man at the hands of a police officer. The crowd lashing out at a public meeting after the chief was seen checking his cell phone, but his response putting critics in their place. Listen.
I was following developments with a 5-year-old little girl sitting on her dad's lap who just got shot in the head by a drive-by shooting. And if some of the people here gave a good goddamn about the victimization of people in this community by crime, I'd take some of their invective more seriously. The greatest racial disparity in the city of Milwaukee is getting shot and killed. Hello. 80% of my homicide victims every year are African American. Now, they know all about the last 3 people that have been killed by the Milwaukee Police Department over the course of the last several years. There's not one of them can name one of the last 3 homicide victims we've had in this city. The fact is that the people out here, some of them, who had the most to say, are absolutely MIA when it comes to the true threats facing this community, and it gets a little tiresome. And when you start getting yelled at for reading the updates of the kid that got shot, yeah, you take it personal.
Wow. So how did residents respond to those words? Milwaukee Police Chief Chief Flynn joins us right now with the fallout and the aftermath, because a lot of people looked at that and said, man, that was a real passionate answer to a major problem. Chief, thanks for joining us. Set the scene. You kind of defined it a little for me in the break. So set the scene that led to that standoff after the meeting.
Well, there were a number of people at the Fire and Police Commission meeting voicing their concern, anger, and in many cases hostility about the police department, as last April we had a shooting that was controversial, that resulted in the death of a homeless mentally ill man, and stirred some broad public concern that was not unjustified. But people came to that meeting to be extremely vocal and aggressive in their manner, and they caught me looking at my cell phone while they were yelling at me. And as I indicated, I was getting updates on the shooting of a little girl who was sitting on Grandpa's lap, being read to, and obviously that is the issue we're dealing with here, isn't it? In cities that are plagued by crime in their most disadvantaged neighborhoods, it's children being shot. It's young adults being shot. It's the future of our neighborhoods being robbed by violent people who are armed with firearms and don't care who they shoot. That's the core of urban policing. And obviously, as we get assailed for those rare events nationally that are controversial, it can be a little frustrating.
And I heard that in your voice. You also segued to something I want to give you some stats on. So in terms of race and crime in Milwaukee, 85% of homicide arrests are of black people. 91% of suspected of homicide are black. 78% of homicide victims are black. And you kind of brought that up. Hey, we're trying to stop what's happening, and a lot of it's black on black crime.
Well, the frustrating thing for me, and please allow me to wordsmith a little bit, I mean, what we have is an incredible disparity in who's victimized by violent crime. Let's not forget the victims. Most of our offenders are repeat offenders. You know, our communities inhabited by poor people of color are trying. I mean, you'd never know the number of community partners we have and authentic community leaders who every day are trying to do something about crime and disorder in their neighborhoods. But they never get quoted. They never get sought for an interview. The only way you get on TV is to scream invective and yell the loudest. And that's very frustrating for police chiefs, because we see guys showing up on TV accusing us of all kinds of depredations that we've never seen before. We go to neighborhood meetings in those disadvantaged communities, and they want one thing from their coppers: protection. And they work with them because they know their children's future depends on their safety. And that's where the important battles are being fought. And a lot of this stuff is a cynical distraction from the real work.
So, and you're convinced that a lot of the rabble-rousers are coming from outside. That's what they've been saying over in Ferguson up until the last couple of days. And that's what you're saying too, correct?
Well, there's no question about it. I mean, we get a big, community of, hipsters in town, waving their signs about oppression, fascism, and Nazism. And their last experience with the police was in their DARE class. All right? We don't get a heck of a lot of invective from the people who actually live and work in this city. I mean, we have a grieving family and a controversial shooting, whom I respect for their restraint. But we've got people attaching themselves to those demonstrations that are actively trying to turn them violent. And that's wrong, and it's underreported.
Yeah, and I just thought obviously the 5-year-old getting shot on his grandfather's lap did not get national attention, but everything else did. Real quick, there's been 170 protests last night regarding what happened in Ferguson. What do you expect on this Thanksgiving? How are you preparing?
Well,